Today we're going to look at what is quite possibly the GOAT of Lego modulars, the Fire Brigade from 2009. Just about everything about this modular, I think, is close to perfect. The fact that it came out 16 years ago is just absolutely amazing. It is aged extremely well. So today, do want to make a couple of modifications. Number one, we're going to put this on a MILS plate just like we have for all the other modulars we've done so far in this series. And this MILS plate is going to be a little bit unique because we do have to incorporate this driveway and going into the garage for the fire truck. So we're going to take you through that. The other thing I would like to do, again, design-wise, I really don't have anything to improve upon here. I think we might very well improve on this tree. You know, again, in 2009, this was a pretty standard tree. Lego's come a long way since then in a variety of ways, so we'll look at that. But the big thing I want to look at is automating this door so that there's a crank somewhere, preferably in the back, that will make this garage door open. So it should be a lot of fun. Let's go take a look. We're going to start with the MILS plate. And before we get into building, I just want to show you this assortment of pieces that I pulled out to build this. There are 23 different colors here. And there's no reason that you need that many colors. It could be just about all the same color either. Again, the key thing about MILS plates, most of these pieces are going to be in the foundation. So the color really doesn't matter. It's a good chance to use some pieces that aren't going to necessarily get used in other builds. Here we go on building the new MILS plate. You'll see structurally it starts out very similarly to the other MILS plates that we've done, but then you get to the front here where we're going to have that driveway where the fire engine pulls into the building, and we want to make that driveway the same level as our roads, which is one tile underneath the sidewalk. So you have to kind of approach that a little bit differently, and that's what we've done here. Now that we've got the structural part of it done, it's time to take all the tiles and other foundation off of the old base plate, and we're going to transfer it onto the MILS plate here. And once all those tiles and everything else is transferred over, then we can go back. Now we want to add an actual tile floor on the ground floor here. That's something that early modulars like the Fire Brigade did not include. So this is really an easy upgrade with a bunch of light bluish gray tiles. Now I want to add a mechanism to be able to close the garage door. What I'm going to start with here is actually, that might look familiar to modular fans. This is the exact same apparatus that's used on the garage door on the corner garage. First we tear up the front of the building. We're going to have to completely rebuild it to be able to add this functionality. And then we're going to put the door in place and check, and with this way this is going to have to work, the garage door is not quite tall enough, so we're going to get one more piece of the garage, and I don't have any more of the red, but we do have another clear one that we're going to add in here, and that'll give the door the proper height that will close properly and also wrap around that apparatus properly at the top. Now we're going to take you through some of the rebuild process, and you can see here a lot of trial and error to be able to get this correct. I've been tinkering with a lot of different things here. All right, let's walk through what we've done here so far. Now, originally, these pieces sat in here like this because the garage door moved along that spot. We don't need those anymore, but I'm still going to need some support in the middle here. So you can see here I put some 1x16 gray across here. It's going to give some support to this new apparatus that we're building. So now more on that. Modified this slightly from what was in the corner garage. Just it's pretty close, but adjusted a little bit here with these pieces. Now let me show you how this is going to connect. Let's fix the garage door. So it goes down into the grooves on those special 1x2s, and you can see those little slots there. Again, it's just like the corner garage. connects in there just like that, okay? And garage door comes up and it goes back down. Now it gets jumbled up a little bit there, but we're going to fix that here in a minute. Now, one thing I want to show you too before we go in too much further, I can't quite see it here, but you know, we've got these pieces with the grooves that go up the side that the garage door works in. And the issue we had is, here's one of them right here, this piece we're talking about. You know, these do not connect, you know, to the rest of the, there's really no other way to connect it unless you're at the top. But since we're putting this apparatus on top, there's not an easy way to do it. But if you can just barely see here, and it's tough for me to zoom in, but let me find another one of those pieces to show you how I fix it. Again, this piece right here, okay? They didn't have this piece back when they originally did the Fire Brigade in 2009. So what happens is, you can barely see it up there. I'm going to show you. To be able to connect it to the piece next to it, I've got a white one of these sitting just like this at the top there. So it sits, it's going to connect here, and that way just gives more structural, so it's those pieces with the grooves aren't going to wobble. So that was our solution to get that connection in there. I had at one point, I've got a couple of these old pieces and I forget where these came from. I thought about trying to work these into the design so that we could, to be able to connect that way, but ended up, it was just going to be too cumbersome. And once I figured out that we could use this thing, it worked out great. So, all right, so we've got this in place. Now we have to start building around it. So I'm going to start putting some of these pieces back on here on the front of the building. Okay, just like this. All right, now it's kind of hard to see here, but let me show you. Originally, this piece, this collection of pieces here in the original Fire Brigade, if you remember, this kind of hung up here like this, and kind of hid the mechanism of the door and just made it look a little bit nicer. Well, that wasn't going to work quite right with how we built this. And the other thing we need to keep in mind, it's kind of hard when you see, but you know, I showed this earlier. When the garage door goes up great. When it goes down, it tends to sometimes jumble up. What you need is a piece across the front there, which the corner garage has, to keep that from jumbling up. So to combine this functionality and then to do that, what I've done here is I've got, this is a 2x10, okay, with 2 or 3 2x4 tiles. So I've built that, and what happens is this just slides in this, just like this, okay? Now it doesn't connect at all right, but it sits in there. Gravity's going to keep it in, and what I'm going to do next is cover the top and wedge that in. So it's got a nice look, by the way. It's kind of keeping that original red cover that was across the top of the garage door, and it adds the functionality. When we bring up the door, it doesn't jumble up as we go up and down. And here's a more close-up view of how that's sitting in there, and you can see this piece is just wedged in with gravity. Again, we're going to cover that up so it won't move. Now we need to rebuild the rest of the first floor, and I want to show you a little change I want to make that's really not going to make much difference. But originally, these were windows right here that we're using. This piece, you can see that's actually a sideways one big window. And the way I had to rebuild this, this wasn't going to quite work to be able to get the ledge on it. And, you know, the other thing too is, you know, that arch goes on there. Those windows get covered up anyway. I'm actually just going to replace this with a traditional of the 3 vertical windows. That's going to fit in there just like that. Again, just a very slight change. Look, it's really not that much of a difference, to be honest. I mean, especially with the arches in front of it, I don't think it's gonna be that big a deal. But the way, like I said, again, it's one compromise I have to make here because of how we had to add this apparatus and redo how this is built. So here is our rebuilt front ground floor of the Fire Brigade. Came back together pretty good. Now, before we get too far into rebuilding the back, let's address one more thing that I want to add to functionality. Obviously, here's the crank for turning that, but I don't want to hide it inside the building. So we're going to extend this out, and I don't want to put it on the side either because there's going to be other buildings here. So I think let's bring it out the back. So what we're doing here is building an axle along that light bluish gray support that we'd added into the frame. And then we add a couple of gears to make that 90-degree turn, and this came together relatively easily. Now that that's complete, we add our little black crank on the outside of the building, and we turn it, and the garage door can go up or down based on that crank that's now on the outside of the building. One more little update on the inside before we finish it up. This stairwell was a death trap because there was no railing, so we just used a bunch of these to put a railing along that stairwell. One more little update. Didn't realize when you put this roof piece back on, you can't turn this crank I added. So re-engineered that roof piece so it's one plate taller. Still looks just fine, and yes, we can still turn the crank to move the garage door. One more thing, this tree is pretty dated, so we're going to replace it with a tree built with several pieces that just were not available in 2009 when this set initially came out. One other little change I like to make on the modulars. This facade says 1932. That's the year that the Lego company was formed. But I like to put a little personal touch on it, so we're going to change two of these numbers. We're going to say 1976, which is when I was born. And you can see this is a relatively easy fix once you get into the build and kind of pry these letters apart. Again, they're still with snot bricks and some kind of unique building methods, but really you're just switching out a couple pieces, the color on a couple of pieces to be able to change a 3 to a 7, and then the 2 becomes a 6. And then everything goes back together real easy. So here is our rebuilt Fire Brigade with a working garage door, thanks to a new crank at the back of the building. Hope you're subscribed to our series. 3 more modulars to go.